There is a sound that seems to live somewhere deep inside human memory. It is not quite music, and it is not quite silence. It exists in the quiet space between those two things. A gentle, irregular rhythm made of warmth, wood, and glowing embers. A sound your nervous system has known for far longer than language itself. You might be hearing it right now, or maybe you are simply remembering it. That soft, steady hiss beneath the occasional quiet snap of wood splitting along its grain. The slow, unhurried crackle, a pop, then another, followed by a long whisper as something inside the fire shifts and settles into a deeper glow. And if you listen closely, something inside you begins to respond. Your shoulders soften, your breathing slows, your mind, almost without asking permission, begins to let go. Tonight, we are going to sit with that sound together. And we are going to explore why, in a very real, very scientific sense, your brain loves it. Why it has always loved it. Why human beings, across every continent and every language, have responded to the sound of fire with a feeling that is strangely familiar, almost like being held. There is no rush tonight. There is nothing you need to remember, and nowhere you need to be. This is simply a quiet conversation about one of the oldest comforts in the human story, shared slowly, in the dark, the way conversations once were, long before the world became so busy. So settle in, and let's begin. Imagine for just a moment that you are sitting outside. It is nighttime. It is the kind of dark that doesn't happen in cities anymore. A genuine, soft, breathing darkness, full of stars and the low sound of insects in the grass somewhere beyond the firelight. You are sitting on the ground or perhaps on something low. The earth is still faintly warm beneath you from the day's sun, even as the air around you carries the first cool suggestion of evening. You have pulled something around your shoulders, a blanket or a jacket, and it is pressed against you just enough to feel like the weight of comfort. And there, in front of you, a fire. It is not a large fire. It doesn't need to be. Just a gentle, generous amber and gold cluster of flames, maybe the height of your knee, working their way slowly through a few dry pieces of wood. The light it makes is not the hard, flat light of a screen or a lamp. It is something older and softer than that. It breathes, it flickers, it moves in patterns that are familiar without being predictable. And it makes that sound. That sound is so specific, isn't it? You know it instantly. You would know it in total darkness. The low bass hiss of combustion. The sound of wood releasing its stored energy slowly, willingly. And then, underneath that, the occasional pop. Not a startling pop. Nothing like a sharp noise that pulls you back into alertness. This is more like a pop that is almost expected, almost musical. The sound of a small pocket of moisture inside the wood turning to steam and escaping, the brief excitement of a tiny release. And then the hiss resumes. The gentle, rhythmic undertone continues. The fire breathes. You are watching the flames, but not quite watching them. Your eyes are on them without being focused. They move and you follow them, but without trying, without effort. There is something almost magnetic about the light, but it doesn't pull you toward it forcefully the way a phone screen or a television does. Pulls gently, like an invitation rather than a demand. Feel your shoulders now. Feel them settle slightly downward. Feel the muscles along your jaw, the ones you may not have noticed you were holding, loosen just a little. Something is already happening in your body, even just imagining this. Something old and reliable and deeply wired into who you are. And that is exactly what we're going to explore tonight. Let's start at the very beginning. Let's ask the question that's worth asking, the one that so often gets overlooked in its simplicity. Why? Why does the sound of fire calm you? Why does the light of a flame settle the nervous system? Why can you sit in front of a fireplace, or even a candle, for an hour, and emerge from that hour quieter and somehow more whole than when you sat down? The answer, it turns out, is not just about aesthetics. It's not just about it being pretty or pleasant or warm, though it is all of those things. The answer is much deeper. It reaches back through time in a way that most of us have never fully considered. And understanding it, really sitting with it, makes the comfort of fire feel even richer, even more significant. We are going to move through this slowly. There is no rush. Let each idea come and rest for a moment before the next arrives. Feel free to close your eyes at any point and simply listen. The words will carry you. The human relationship with fire is almost impossibly old. When we say old, we mean it in the truest, most expansive sense. We are talking about a relationship that predates our species as we know it today. We are talking about a bond that was forming while human anatomy itself was still being shaped. The earliest evidence we have for our ancestors using fire, not making it, just using it, gathering it from lightning-struck trees and natural wildfires and carrying those embers carefully home, goes back roughly 1 to 2 million years to a hominin called Homo erectus. These were our distant relatives, not quite us, but recognizably in our lineage. They stood upright, they used stone tools, and they, at some point, learned to recognize that fire was not just danger. Fire was resource. Fire was life. In South Africa, at a place called Wonderwork Cave, archaeologists have found charred animal bones and plant ash that suggest fire was being used inside a cave approximately 1 million years ago. This was Homo erectus territory, a creature not yet fully human, gathering at a site of warmth and light in the dark. Think about what that moment must have felt like, even in the dimmest possible imaginative terms. The darkness outside a cave at night, 1 million years ago, was not peaceful. It was full of large predators with excellent night vision. Lions, leopards, hyenas. The darkness was genuinely dangerous. Not symbolically dangerous, not anxiously imagined as dangerous, but actively, lethally dangerous. Every other nocturnal primate at that moment in history, the monkeys, the apes, retreated to the trees at night or they didn't survive. The dark was not their domain. But here is where fire changed everything. A fire at the mouth of a cave or at the center of a camp created a sphere of light and heat that pushed the darkness back. Predators, for the most part, avoided fire. Not because they couldn't walk through it, but because the combination of light and smell and sound was something they had no frame for, something that their instincts classified as uncertain and therefore best avoided. The fire was a boundary. It said, "Inside this circle of light, you are safer than you would be anywhere else in this dark world." And so the creatures who gathered around fire, who maintained it, who learned to tend it carefully through the night, they survived at higher rates than those who did not. They slept more deeply. They kept their young safer. They woke up the next morning. And this happened generation after generation, for tens of thousands of generations. The brain that learned to relax beside a fire, that was the brain that passed its genes forward. The body that settled and breathed more slowly in the warmth of a fire, that was the body that lived long enough to have children. In the deep, slow mathematics of natural selection, over hundreds of thousands of years, something very particular was being wired into the human nervous system. The sound of fire equals safety. The light of fire equals protection. The warmth of fire equals rest. These are not just pleasant associations. These are ancient, biological, inherited instructions written into the very architecture of how your nervous system responds to the world. Let yourself feel that for a moment. The comfort you feel near a fire is not something you learned. It is not a preference you developed. It was handed to you by your ancestors, the way they handed you the shape of your hands, the color of your eyes, the rhythm of your heartbeat. It is a very old gift, and perhaps that makes it feel a little different now. A little heavier with meaning, and also a little lighter, because you don't have to do anything to deserve this comfort. You already carry it. It is already inside you. As time went on, as our ancestors moved from simply using fire to actually learning to make it, the relationship deepened in ways that shaped not just survival but the entire structure of human social life. The ability to make fire deliberately, striking flint against pyrite, or working a wooden drill against dry bark until the friction produced an ember. This is one of the most significant technological achievements in the entire history of our species. And recent archaeological evidence, published in 2025 after a discovery at a site called Barnham in eastern England, suggests that the earliest known deliberate fire-making may go back as far as 400,000 years. At that site, researchers found fragments of iron pyrite, a mineral that produces sparks when struck with flint, next to the remains of an ancient hearth. The firemakers were likely Neanderthals, our evolutionary cousins who shared the world with our ancestors for a very long time. What did they do with this fire? What did all of our fire-making ancestors do? In the long, slow evenings when the day's work was finished and the night stretched open around them, they sat together. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years living with the Jew/Hone Bushmen of Botswana and Namibia, people who maintain a way of life that, in many of its rhythms and patterns, is similar to the hunter-gatherer existence that characterized the vast majority of our evolutionary history. She recorded conversations during the day and at night, and what she found was striking. During the day, about 3/4 of conversations centered on practical matters. Economics, hunting, disputes, the logistics of living. But at night, around the fire, everything changed. More than 80% of nighttime firelight conversation was devoted to storytelling, to songs, to myths, to the recounting of people in distant communities, to discussions of the spirit world, to the kind of imaginative, communal, relationship-deepening talk that builds culture and trust and identity. As Robin Dunbar, an anthropologist at Oxford University, observed when commenting on Wiesner's research, fire effectively extended the day for our ancestors, adding as many as 4 hours of social time that simply didn't exist for other primates, who retreated to the trees in darkness. And in those extra hours, the campfire provided something that daylight couldn't. A space where only social interaction, only community building could really happen. You can't forage in the dark. You can't easily make tools by firelight alone. But you can talk. You can sing. You can hold a child in your lap while they fall asleep and watch the flames with you. The fire was the world's first gathering place. It was the original living room, the original theater, the original church. Every story that has ever moved you, every myth that has ever given you language for something you couldn't quite name, every song that has carried something wordless across the centuries. All of it has its roots in a circle of people around a fire, in the dark, with the warmth on their faces and the sound of crackling wood all around them. And here is something beautiful that Wiesner wrote when she described what those evening gatherings felt like, as she experienced them firsthand. The body language is dimmed by firelight. Awareness of self and others is reduced. Facial expressions, flickering with the flames, are either softened, or in the case of anguish or fear, gently blurred. Agendas of the day are dropped while small children fall asleep in the laps of kin. Can you feel that? The small children falling asleep in the warmth. The adults settling into something slower. The stories reaching across the group, pulling everyone into the same imagined world. The fire at the center of it all, steady and breathing and present. This is not a distant thing. This is what your nervous system is remembering in its oldest places when you sit beside a fire and feel yourself relax. Now let's come to the science of what is actually happening inside you. Because there is science here. Very good science. And it is as calming to understand as the fire itself. In 2014, a researcher named Christopher Lynn at the University of Alabama published a study that became one of the most cited pieces of research on the human response to fire. He recruited 226 adults and had them watch video of a campfire under different conditions, sometimes with sound, sometimes without, sometimes just a still image used as a control. He measured their blood pressure before and after. The results were striking and clear. Watching a fire, especially watching it with the sound of crackling, caused a significant, measurable decrease in blood pressure. Not just a slight fluctuation, a meaningful, dose-dependent reduction. The longer participants watched the fire, the calmer they became. The relaxation deepened over time, not faded. And critically, the relaxation effect was strongest when the fire sound was included. When participants could hear the crackling, the blood pressure reduction was more pronounced than when they watched in silence. Something specific about that sound, its particular irregular rhythm, its blend of low rumble and higher snapping tones, was doing something to the nervous system that simple visual warmth alone could not quite achieve. Lynn and his colleagues named what they were observing the campfire effect, a state of reduced stress, increased relaxation, and greater social openness that fire reliably produces in human beings. And they argued convincingly that this effect is not a learned preference or a cultural habit. It is an evolved response. It is hardwired. It is, in the truest sense, in your blood. To understand why the sound of fire does this, it helps to understand a little about the two great systems that govern your body's experience of the world. Your autonomic nervous system, the part of your nervous system that operates below conscious thought, regulating your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, your immune function, has two main branches. The first is the sympathetic nervous system. This is what most people call the fight or flight response. When it activates, your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises, your muscles tense, stress hormones like cortisol flood your bloodstream. Your body is preparing for action, for threat, for emergency. This is the system that fires when you're frightened, or rushing, or under pressure, or staring at a screen filled with alarming news at 11 at night. The second is the parasympathetic nervous system. This is sometimes called the rest and digest system, and those two words tell you almost everything you need to know about it. When the parasympathetic system is active, your heart slows, your breathing deepens, your blood pressure falls, digestion resumes, your muscles soften. The body understands that there is no immediate threat, that it is safe to restore itself, to repair itself, to rest. These two systems act like the accelerator and the brake of your physiology. The sympathetic system is the accelerator, always ready to rev up and push you into action. The parasympathetic system is the brake, slowing you down, signaling that the moment is safe. The sound of fire activates the brake. It does this, researchers believe, through multiple pathways working together. The warmth of fire dilates blood vessels and slows the heart. Warmth itself has long been known to shift the body toward parasympathetic dominance. The visual rhythm of flames, moving gently and unpredictably but never sharply or aggressively, sends the same kind of calming signal. And the sound, that particular acoustic texture of crackling, that blend of low and mid frequencies varying without pattern, tells the brain something very specific. It says, this is a known sound. This is a familiar sound. This is the sound of warmth and safety and human presence. You have heard this sound 10,000 times across the deep memory of your species, and it has never once meant danger. Your brain, processing that information, does what a brain does when it receives consistent evidence of safety. It lets go. Let's talk about what that sound actually is acoustically, because there is something fascinating here. Fire crackling is not a single tone. It's not a simple steady hum. It's a complex mixture of sounds that span a wide range of frequencies, from the deep, low rumble of the main burn to the mid-range hiss of combustion to the higher, sharper snaps and pops when wood splits or trapped moisture escapes. Scientists who study acoustic signatures of fire have noted that the crackling of burning wood produces what's called an impulse event, a brief, sharp sound that rises and falls quickly, followed by a return to the steady hiss beneath. These impulse events happen irregularly. They don't follow a beat. You cannot predict when the next pop will come. And yet, somehow that irregularity is precisely what makes it so relaxing. This might seem counterintuitive. We might expect that predictable sounds would be more calming than unpredictable ones. But the brain is not that simple. What the brain actually finds most threatening is sudden, sharp, loud changes in its acoustic environment, because those signals threat. What it finds most calming is sounds that are consistently present, non-threatening, and not demanding attention even as they occupy the background of awareness. There is a concept in acoustics research sometimes called 1/F noise or pink noise that helps explain this. Pink noise is a type of sound where the energy is distributed across frequencies in a particular way, stronger at lower frequencies, gently decreasing as frequency increases. It sounds, to the ear, like a steady rain or a waterfall or wind in the leaves, and it corresponds very closely to many of the naturally occurring sounds in the world. The rhythm of ocean waves, the rustle of a forest, the beat of a heart. The crackling of fire shares many of these acoustic characteristics. It has a dominant lower frequency base, and it varies irregularly, unpredictably, but within a range that never becomes alarming. The brain, encountering this sound, does not need to analyze it. It does not need to evaluate it for threat, can simply let it exist. And in doing so, it relaxes. Research by scientists at Brighton and Sussex Medical School found that natural sounds, the kind of gentle, organic acoustic environments that include running water, birdsong, wind, and fire, directly affect the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Participants who listened to natural sounds showed faster recovery from the stress response, lower skin conductance levels, and changes in brain activity consistent with a shift toward rest. The effect was clearest in people who were most stressed to begin with. The more tense someone was before exposure to natural sound, the more dramatically their body relaxed in response to it. And separately, research specifically on nature sounds showed that when participants listened to birdsong, running water, or similar natural acoustic environments compared to urban noise, their parasympathetic nervous activity increased, their heart rate fell, and they reported feeling more comfortable, more relaxed, and more at ease. Fire sound is an ancient natural sound, perhaps the most familiar natural sound the human species has ever had. And your body receives it the way it was evolved to receive it, with relief. Allow yourself for a moment to simply be in it. Breathe in, slowly. Feel the air cool in your nostrils and warm as it goes deeper. Breathe out slowly, longer than the breath in. Let your chest soften. Let your stomach be loose. You don't have to do anything with what you're learning tonight. You don't have to remember it. Just let it sink in, the way warmth sinks into cold hands beside a fire. Slowly, gently, from the outside in, the fire crackles. Somewhere right now in your imagination or in your ears, that sound exists. That low, irregular, trustworthy sound. And something in your body knows it. Something very old knows that sound and is at rest. Let's move deeper into the brain for a little while. There is a concept in environmental psychology called soft fascination, first articulated by researchers Rachel and Stephen Kaplan at the University of Michigan in the 1980s. Their work led to what became known as attention restoration theory, and it offers one of the most elegant explanations we have for why natural environments, including fires, restore us in a way that screens and artificial entertainment do not. The Kaplans made a distinction between two kinds of attention. The first is what they called directed attention, the effortful, voluntary focusing of your mind that you use for everything demanding. Working through a difficult problem, reading a complicated document, following the thread of a conversation while distracted. This kind of attention requires constant active maintenance. It is tiring, and it is what we use for most of our waking hours in the modern world. The second kind of attention is involuntary attention, the kind that doesn't require effort, the kind that arises naturally when something gently, effortlessly draws your focus without demanding anything from you in return. This involuntary attention, when it is engaged, allows the brain's directed attention systems to rest. And the best way to engage it, the most reliably restorative way, is through what the Kaplans called soft fascination. Gentle, non-threatening, interesting stimuli that hold attention lightly without gripping it. Think about the difference between watching a fire and watching a thriller movie. Both hold your attention, but they hold it very differently. The movie demands, creates urgency, suspense, investment. Your directed attention is working the whole time, tracking plot, predicting outcomes, managing emotional responses to tension. The fire invites. It moves and your eyes follow, crackles and your ears notice, but it never demands anything of you. It makes no claim on your cognitive resources. It simply exists, beautifully and unpredictably, and your awareness can rest on it the way a bird rests on a fence, lightly and ready to depart into your own thoughts whenever they arise. Research into the neuroscience behind soft fascination has found that this state of effortless, gentle attention corresponds with increased activity in what is called the default mode network, a large-scale network of brain regions that activates during rest, reflection, mind-wandering, and memory processing. The default mode network is, in many ways, the brain at its most nourishing work. It is where we integrate experiences, process emotions, make meaning of our lives. It is suppressed when we are task-focused and demanding of ourselves. It flourishes when we are gently, softly at rest, like sitting beside a fire. Interestingly, research suggests that watching fire activates the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, in a specifically calming way. The flickering patterns of flame engage this emotionally relevant region, but without triggering any threat response. The result is what some researchers have described as a kind of natural meditation, a state where the brain is neither fully alert nor asleep, where attention is softly occupied without being taxed, where the default mode network can do its quiet, essential work. Psychologist Matt Rossano at Southeastern Louisiana University has suggested something even more profound. He argues that the meditative state that fire watching induces may have actually shaped human cognitive evolution. The neural pathways that activate during meditation significantly overlap with the regions governing what is called working memory, our capacity to hold multiple ideas in mind simultaneously and reason about them. If our ancestors regularly entered meditative states around fires at night, Rossano suggests, those who were best at it gained a cognitive advantage. Natural selection, over hundreds of thousands of years, may have favored the human brain's capacity for this particular kind of relaxed, reflective awareness. Our ability to let go, to be still, to watch the fire and let the mind wander, may literally be one of our evolutionary adaptations. The human brain may be, in part, shaped by fire, not just by the cooking it enabled, not just by the light it provided, but by the long, quiet hours of sitting beside it, watching it, learning the art of being at rest in the world. You are doing that right now. Right now, in this moment, you are practicing the most ancient human form of rest. You are letting your mind move gently through ideas that don't demand anything of you. You are not solving a problem. You are not performing. You are simply listening to a quiet voice in the dark, the way your ancestors listened to the quiet voice of whoever sat across the fire from them, telling stories about distant places and long ago times. Your brain is doing what it was shaped to do. Let it. There is one more layer to the fire's light that is worth visiting slowly, because it connects the visible warmth of the flame to what's happening deep in your biology. Light, it turns out, is not just something we see. Light is something that reaches into the very center of our biological rhythms. Your body has an internal clock called the circadian rhythm that governs the rise and fall of dozens of hormones, including the one that most directly controls your desire for sleep, melatonin. Melatonin is produced by a small gland in the brain called the pineal gland, and its production is very closely tied to light. Specifically, it is tied to the wavelength of light. Blue light, the short wavelength light produced by LED screens, fluorescent bulbs, and most modern artificial lighting, is particularly good at suppressing melatonin production. When your eyes encounter blue light in the evening, your brain interprets it as a signal that it is still daytime, still time to be alert, and melatonin production slows or stops. This is, in biological terms, one of the most significant mismatches between modern life and the ancient design of the human body. For nearly all of human history, the only light available after dark was fire. And firelight, the warm, amber, flickering light of a flame, is profoundly low in blue wavelengths. It lives in the warm end of the spectrum: orange, amber, gold, red. The brain, receiving this kind of light, does not interpret it as daylight. It interprets it as evening, as the signal that the day is ending, that the body should begin its descent into rest. A researcher at UCLA, writing about what happens to the human circadian rhythm when all artificial light is removed, described the situation beautifully. With the very first campfire humans lit to push back the night, they introduced some disruption to the circadian cycle. But the candle and the campfire were in a completely different category from modern electric light, because their wavelengths were so warm, so low in blue light, that they were unlikely to significantly suppress melatonin. For most of human history, the fire at night was not working against sleep. It was signaling gently that the long day was done. A study of participants who spent a week camping without any artificial light, no phones, no flashlights, no electric lamps, found that after just a week in natural light conditions, their melatonin rhythms had synchronized completely with the rising and setting of the sun. Their bodies were, in a measurable and profound way, more aligned with the time of day than they had ever been in their ordinary lives. The firelight that glows in your imagination right now, or perhaps in the candle across the room, or in the video playing on your screen, that warm amber light is not working against your sleep. It is one of the oldest sleep signals your body has ever known. It is your body's most familiar cue that the day has closed, that the fire is tended, that the predators are far away, that you are safe to rest. Let's be quiet for a little while. Sometimes in a good conversation, the best moments aren't the words. They're the spaces between the words, where what's been said settles in and finds its place. Take a slow breath, in and out. Feel whatever part of you that was still holding on. Let it loosen by one small degree. There is a fire somewhere in the deep architecture of your imagination. It has always been there. It is not dramatic or overwhelming. It is just a small, steady, amber thing in the center of a circle of warmth. And around it, in your imagination, you can place whatever feels right. A few people you love, or perhaps no one at all, just you and the fire and the enormous quiet night. The fire breathes, crackles once, a soft pop like a knuckle gently released. Then the low hiss resumes. The light moves. The warmth is against your face and hands. You are exactly where you are, and that is exactly where you need to be. Now let us bring together everything we've explored, slowly and gently, the way a river braids its tributaries together before reaching the sea. We began with the most ancient facts, the fact that Homo erectus, nearly 2 million years ago, began associating fire with shelter and survival. The fact that for hundreds of thousands of years, controlled fire shaped every aspect of our ancestors' nights. Their safety, their warmth, their sleep, their dreaming. The fact that at Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, and at Kubifora in Kenya, and at 100 other sites scattered across the ancient world, the physical evidence of fire sits in the same sediment layers as the bones of people who, in some profound and ancestral sense, are your relatives. You carry something from all of them. We moved through the long, slow process by which fire became not just a survival tool but a social one. The way firelight created a space, after dark, after the practical demands of the day were done, where something softer and more deeply human could occur. Stories, songs, the sharing of knowledge about distant people and places, the transmission of values and myths and ways of being in the world. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner's research with the Jew/Hone Bushmen showed us that more than 80% of nighttime firelit conversation is devoted to storytelling, to the imaginative and relational work that builds culture and community. And those regular gatherings, reaching back at least 400,000 years according to the archaeological record, are where something like modern human consciousness may have first taken shape, where language deepened, where empathy was practiced, where the extraordinary cognitive capacity that makes us human, the ability to inhabit someone else's perspective, to understand that other people have inner lives as rich and real as your own, was exercised and refined night after night around the fire. But before we come to the nervous system, let's spend a little time with another aspect of fire that shaped us in ways we rarely consider when we're simply enjoying the warmth. Fire did not just keep our ancestors warm and safe, cooked their food. And cooking, it turns out, may be the most transformative thing fire ever did for the human species. Richard Wrangham, a biological anthropologist at Harvard University, has spent decades developing what he calls the cooking hypothesis. His argument, presented most fully in his book Catching Fire, is that the regular cooking of food was not just an improvement in diet. It was an evolutionary event that physically transformed the human body and, over time, the human brain. Here's the core of the idea. When you cook food, you change its molecular structure. Starches unfold, proteins denature, cell walls break down. The result is food that is dramatically easier for the body to digest and absorb. A calorie of cooked food delivers significantly more usable energy to the body than the same calorie in its raw form, because so much of the digestive work has already been done by the heat. For an ancestor who needed every calorie it could get, this was transformative. With more energy available from each meal, the body could afford to run more expensive systems. And the most expensive system in the human body, the system that costs the most energy to maintain, is the brain. The human brain is approximately 2% of body weight, but consumes somewhere between 20 and 25% of the body's total energy budget. It is an extraordinarily expensive organ. And the evolutionary record shows that brain size in our lineage began to increase significantly around the same time period that evidence for regular fire use becomes more consistent and widespread. Homo erectus, the first of our ancestors with truly modern human body proportions, had a larger brain relative to body size than any earlier hominin. And Homo erectus is the hominin most closely associated with the early consistent use of fire. It is not possible to draw a simple straight line between cooking and large brains. The evolutionary story is vastly more complex and contested than that. But the connection is intriguing. The idea that the caloric liberation made possible by cooking may have, over many generations, supported the growth of larger, more energetically demanding brains like ours, is a genuinely compelling hypothesis. If it is even partially correct, then the fire burning in your imagination tonight has a more intimate relationship with your capacity to contemplate it than you might have imagined. The warmth that cooked the food that fueled the brain, your brain through the deep lineage of your ancestors, may be the reason you have a brain capable of wondering, as you are wondering right now why that same warmth feels so profound. Fire made the mind that can ask why fire is beautiful. There is something almost dizzying about that, if you let yourself feel it. But don't let it keep you awake. Let it be something gentle to carry into dreams. Let's slow down for a while and simply breathe. In through the nose. Feel the air cool at the bridge of the nose, warming as it descends into the throat, warmer still as it fills the lungs. Feel the chest expand gently without forcing. Feel the belly soften outward as the breath finds all the space available to it. And out, long, longer than the in-breath. That extended exhale is the breath of the parasympathetic system, the breath of the rest and digest response. When the exhale is longer than the inhale, the vagus nerve, that great wandering nerve that connects the brain to the heart, the lungs, the stomach, the organs of digestion, carries the signal of calm throughout the body. Heart rate variability shifts. The intervals between heartbeats become more varied, which counterintuitively is a sign of greater health and flexibility in the nervous system. Your body knows how to breathe itself towards sleep. It has been doing it every night of your life. You don't need to teach it. You just need to allow it. Let the breath be slow and slower, and the fire breathes with you. The embers pulse very gently, with the slight currents of air that cross the room, that enter the space, that carry your breath and the warmth of the fire together into the same quiet atmosphere. You and the fire are breathing the same air, just as your ancestors did, just as every human being who has ever sat beside a fire has done. The air you breathe has been breathed by all of them. There is something humbling about that, and something enormously comforting. You are not isolated in your life and your night. You are embedded in the longest story ever told, the story of human beings, gathering around warmth, breathing together in the dark. And then the fire changed something else about us, something even more intimate than diet or brain size. It changed the architecture of our social relationships. Here is a small but significant fact. Most primates spend a great deal of time in what primatologists call social grooming, the physical act of picking through each other's fur, removing parasites and debris, maintaining the physical contact that is the primate currency of social bonding. In chimpanzee communities, grooming can occupy several hours of the day. It is how alliances are built and maintained. It is how trust is established and renewed. Human social groups, however, tend to be much larger than the grooming-dependent social groups of other primates. We maintain relationships with more people than we could possibly groom. And Robin Dunbar, the Oxford anthropologist who developed the famous number that bears his name, Dunbar's number, the proposed cognitive limit of about 150 stable social relationships that a human brain can comfortably maintain, has argued that we manage to scale beyond grooming-based bonding through language. We gossip, we tell stories, we talk. And in doing so, we can maintain the equivalent of social grooming with many more people simultaneously than physical grooming would ever allow. The campfire, by creating a space where the whole group could gather and talk, was the original platform for scaled human bonding. Think about what it meant to sit in the circle of firelight with 20 or 30 people, listening to a story that made everyone laugh or moved everyone to sadness. In that shared emotional experience, bonds were being formed and renewed. Trust was being established. The group was being knit together with the fire at its center in a way that no other activity could quite replicate. And this is why anthropologist Polly Wiesner, who spent so many hours recording those fireside conversations among the Jew/Hone people, found that storytelling was not merely entertainment. The stories, she wrote, put listeners on the same emotional wavelength and elicited understanding, trust, and sympathy. The fire didn't just warm the bodies of the people gathered around it. It warmed their relationships to each other. Camps with skilled storytellers, subsequent research has found, were associated with higher levels of cooperation. People preferred to live near good storytellers. They trusted them more. They shared resources more willingly with them. The ability to gather people around a fire and tell them a story that moved them was not just an art. It was a form of social leadership, a way of maintaining the collective bonds that made survival possible. You carry something of this too. The pleasure you take in a good story. The way a beautiful narrative makes you feel less alone. The particular warmth that comes from being in a room where everyone is moved by the same thing. These are not accidental pleasures. They are your social nature, your evolved need for the kind of communal emotional synchrony that the campfire made possible. And they are available to you right now. This story, this quiet, shared experience of being in the warmth together, wherever you are. Let's be quiet once more. There is a specific kind of quiet that follows a good story. Not the emptiness of silence after noise, but the fullness of silence after meaning. The way a room feels after music has played and then stopped. Still resonating, still warm with whatever the music left behind. You know this feeling. Rest in it now. Just let the quiet be full. Let the ideas that have been moving through you tonight settle where they will, without trying to hold them or place them. They will find their places on their own, the way everything finds its place in the long working of a good night's sleep. The fire breathes, very quietly, just the embers now, and the warmth, and the sound of something completing itself with patience and grace. To the way fires sound directly shifts your body from sympathetic arousal, from the low hum of vigilance and alertness, toward parasympathetic rest. Christopher Lynn's research showed us the blood pressure falling, the body becoming measurably calmer in direct proportion to the crackling of the fire. The specific acoustic qualities of the sound, the low-frequency bass, the irregular pops, the blend of frequencies that never becomes alarming, telling the brain, in a language older than words, that this is a safe place. We explored soft fascination and the default mode network. The way fire holds your attention effortlessly, the way the brain's most restorative processes come alive in exactly the mental space that firelight creates. Not the sharp, demanding alertness of a thriller. Not the empty numbness of exhaustion. Something in between and better than both. A gentle, awake, reflective rest. And we came to the biology of light. To the warm amber frequencies of firelight that don't suppress melatonin the way modern screens do. To the ancient circadian signal embedded in that color, the signal that says evening, that says ending, that says the day is done and the body can begin its long descent into sleep. All of these things are happening together whenever you are near a fire. All of them are happening in you right now simply by inhabiting this conversation. because the image is enough, the sound is enough, the science is enough. Your brain doesn't distinguish, at the deepest levels of its evolutionary programming, between sitting beside an actual fire and being in a state that vividly, gently evokes one. The response is the same. The parasympathetic brake is pressed. The melatonin continues to rise. The default mode network hums along in its quiet, essential way. The ancient instructions are followed. You are safe. You are warm. The fire is tended. You can rest. There is something I want to say about the modern world for a moment, not in a way that is alarming or troubling, but in a way that might make tonight feel a little more significant. We live in an era that has, in a very short space of time, removed nearly all of the environmental cues that once told the human nervous system when to be alert and when to rest. We have screens that flood our eyes with blue light after dark. We have notifications that interrupt the parasympathetic state before it can fully establish itself. We have a culture that treats busyness as virtue and stillness as failure, that has made the act of simply sitting quietly beside something warm and gentle and slow feel like indulgence. But it is not indulgence. It is one of the most ancient and necessary things a human being can do. The data from Christopher Lynn's study at the University of Alabama showed that the Campfire effect, that measurable decrease in blood pressure, that shift toward relaxation and social openness, is strongest among people who score higher on measures of empathy and social cooperation. The genes that make human beings responsive to fire's calming signal, Lynn suggested, may be the same genes that made our ancestors better at cooperation, better at community, better at the kind of pro-social behavior that held groups together through difficulty. The capacity to be calmed by fire may be, in other words, not just about individual well-being. It may be about our fitness for each other, our ability to be present with other people, our capacity for trust. When you let yourself rest, really rest, with the kind of gentle, soft, fascinated awareness that a fire induces, you are not checking out of the world. You are becoming more capable of being in it, more patient, more open, more fully yourself. Your ancestors understood this. They made rest a communal act, something done together, in a circle with a fire at the center. The fire was not a background element. It was the reason for gathering. And in some small but real way, right now, you are still in that circle. Let your breathing be very slow now. You don't have to try to make it slow. Just notice it. Notice the air coming in and notice it going out. Notice the slight pause at the top of the breath, the moment of fullness. Notice the slight pause at the bottom, after the breath leaves you, the moment of emptiness. In the space between those moments, there is nothing required of you. There is just the warmth, the soft sound, the gentle amber light somewhere in the background of your mind. Your body knows what to do from here. It has always known. Every night of every life you might have led, your body would have done this. Grown heavy and still, let the fire blur slightly at the edges of your vision. Let the sounds of the night become a murmur. Let the thoughts slow from their daytime urgency into the longer, slower rhythms of sleep. This is not something you need to work at. This is something you can simply allow. Let's stay with the fire a little longer. It is still burning. It will burn for a while yet. There is no need to tend it or worry about it. It is doing what it does. Releasing the old energy of wood into light and warmth and that particular sound. Giving it all to the night, giving it all to you. Watch it in your mind's eye the way you might watch the sea. Not looking for anything specific, not trying to understand it, just present, just here. The flame dips and rises, finds a new shape briefly, then finds another. Orange at its core, yellow where it stretches upward, blue and purple where it is most hot, where it meets the wood directly and the chemistry of combustion is most intense. The colors blend and shift and separate again, endlessly without repeating. There is a famous mathematical concept called fractal geometry, patterns that repeat at different scales, that are self-similar without being identical. The branching of a tree, the spiraling of a fern, the turbulence of a river. These all display fractal properties, and so does fire. The structure of a flame is fractal. The large convective curls of the main body are mirrored by smaller curls within them, and smaller ones within those. The eye moves across the structure and finds it satisfying in a way that's difficult to articulate, because the satisfaction is pre-verbal. It is the satisfaction of a visual system evolved to find meaning and safety in the natural world, encountering a pattern it recognizes as natural and therefore trustworthy. Your eyes were made, in a sense, for this, for the fractals of the natural world, for the branching and flowing and curling of living systems. Screens, by contrast, offer flat, rectangular, high-contrast, non-fractal information. The eye processes it but does not rest in it. Fire, the eye rests in. You might be feeling it now in your body, that heaviness that is not quite the heaviness of fatigue, but something gentler. The way your limbs feel slightly more distant. The way the edges of the room or the edges of your thoughts have softened just a little. This is your parasympathetic nervous system doing its work, slowing the heartbeat by one beat, then another, lowering the baseline of arousal by a small, quiet increment, inviting the muscles, which have been holding everything up all day, doing their faithful, tireless work, to begin, just begin the long process of release. There's no rush. The process doesn't need your help. It will do what it always does, what it has done for every night of your life, every night of every human life that has ever been lived. You just have to let it. In Japanese culture, there is a practice called Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. It involves spending time in a forest not to hike or exercise, but simply to be present in it, to let the sensory experience of the forest wash over you without agenda. Research has found that even 20 minutes in a natural environment, hearing natural sounds, seeing natural forms, breathing forest air, produces measurable decreases in cortisol, measurable shifts toward parasympathetic activation, measurable improvements in mood and immune function. Fire, I think, is a kind of Shinrin-yoku of its own. Not the forest, but something equally ancient and natural. Not green and growing, but warm and burning and alive in its own way. A piece of the natural world you can bring inside or carry in your imagination. A small, manageable wildness. A fragment of the ancient world contained in a hearth, doing the same thing it has always done. Calming the animal inside the human, reminding the body that the night is safe, that there is warmth in the dark, that you do not need to stay alert for threats that are not there. You can breathe out, you can be still, you can sleep. Let's imagine, for a last long while, that we are back beside the fire. It is quieter now than it was earlier. The conversation has slowed. The people who were with you, whoever you imagined around that fire. Some of them have already drifted into sleep, curled on their sides, breathing slow and deep in the warmth. The fire has settled too, burned down a little, the tall active flames giving way to a wide bed of orange and red ember, glowing steadily, breathing its heat into the cold air around it. This is the most beautiful stage of a fire, not the crackling, vigorous flames of the beginning, but the deep, quiet, radiant glow of the ember stage. The color of it is extraordinary. Not orange, not red, exactly, but something between and deeper, the color of the inside of a pomegranate, or the horizon just after sunset, or the space where the sun lives in your memory. The light it gives off is steadier now, less flickering, more constant. The sound is quieter too, just a soft, occasional breath of a crackle, a gentle pop, then the low, barely there hiss of wood still giving itself slowly to the heat. You are sitting with it, not watching it exactly, not thinking about it. Just near it, just in its warmth. Your hands are loose in your lap. Your head is dropped just slightly forward, the neck gently soft. The air smells of old wood smoke and cold night and something green from the dark land beyond the firelight. Above you, the stars. More stars than you can count. More stars than there are words in any language. Each of them a sun, each of them almost incomprehensibly far away. And yet here they are, laid out above you like the ceiling of the world, steady and calm and familiar. Your ancestors lay under these stars. Their ancestors lay under these stars. Every human being who has ever lived looked up from the earth into this same black ocean of light and felt, in their chest, whatever you are feeling in yours right now. Small and enormous, held and free. The fire breathes. You breathe with it. There is no difference, right now, between the rhythm of the fire and the rhythm of you. You are both ancient. You are both part of the same long story, the story of carbon and oxygen and warmth and time. The wood in the fire was once a tree that breathed the air that you are breathing now. The warmth of the fire is the stored sunlight of summers past, releasing back into the world. Everything is returning. Everything is cycling. Everything is as it has always been. You can let go of the day now, not forcefully, not by trying, just by allowing the process that is already underway to continue. Your heartbeat is slower than it was an hour ago. Your breathing is deeper than it was an hour ago. Your muscles are softer than they were an hour ago. All of this has been happening without your instruction. Your ancient body, your ancient nervous system, knowing exactly what the warmth and sound and light of the fire means. Knowing exactly what to do. Psychologist Christopher Lynn, in his research on the campfire effect, proposed something that has stayed with me since I first read it. He suggested that the people in early human communities who were most calmed by fire, who were most deeply relaxed by it, whose blood pressure dropped the most, who were most socially open in its light, those people may have been better suited for community life. Calmer, more tolerant, more able to sit with others without aggression or anxiety, more able to listen to a story and let it move them. In other words, the ones who could truly rest beside the fire may have been the ones who became the best neighbors, the best parents, the best members of a group that depended on cooperation to survive. Your capacity to be calmed by this, by warmth, by soft light, by the ancient sound of wood releasing its heat, may be part of what made your ancestors' communities work. Part of what allowed them to gather night after night and build the trust and the shared imagination that eventually became language, culture, art, civilization. The peace you feel right now is not separate from who you are in the world. It is part of it. When you are rested, you are your best self. When you are calm, you are your most connected self. When your nervous system is in this ancient, fire-lit equilibrium, you are the version of yourself that your ancestors spent hundreds of thousands of years refining. Rest is not a retreat from life. It is the root of it. Feel your body now. Feel the weight of it, the specific, familiar weight of your own limbs, your own chest, your own face. Feel where you are resting, the surface beneath you, soft or firm, familiar. Feel the air in the room, whatever temperature it is, whatever quality. It is your air. It is your room. It is your body. And beneath all of that, in the quietest, deepest place, there is something you don't need to find or create. It's already there. It's always there under the noise and the day and the thinking and the doing. Stillness. The same stillness that was there before you were born. The same stillness that is between the thoughts. The same stillness that the fire, in all its ancient wisdom, has always been pointing toward. You don't have to go anywhere to find it. You are already here. The embers are glowing now. The fire has found its quietest form. The color of the coals is extraordinary. A deep, pulsing, rose gold warmth, fading very slowly at the edges toward gray, but at the center still deeply, generously alive with heat. The sound is almost nothing now. Just a murmur, a breathing, and the light is just enough to see the outline of the world around you, just enough to know where the warmth is, just enough to feel the boundary between firelight and darkness, and to know with your whole body that you are on the right side of it. You are warm, you are safe. The long, ancient, trustworthy night is around you, and within it, this small circle of light, and you are in that circle, right where you have always belonged. Let your eyes be whatever they want to be now, heavy perhaps, or already closed. Let the images behind your eyelids be whatever they are. The slow play of color and warmth, or nothing at all, just the feeling of depth and rest. Your breathing will do what it needs to do, slower and slower. Each exhale a little longer than the inhale, the body's own way of pressing the brake, of signaling to every cell, we are safe, we are at rest. We can begin the great work of restoration that only happens in sleep. Don't try to sleep. Don't push toward it. Just rest here in this ancient warmth. Sleep is already coming to find you. It knows where you are. It always does in the end. Before we drift entirely away from words, there is one last thing worth saying. The fire you've been sitting beside tonight, in your mind, in your memory, in the sound of it playing somewhere nearby, that fire is real in the sense that matters most. Real in its effect on your body. Real in its resonance with the oldest parts of who you are. The crackling you hear or imagine or remember, that sound has been heard by every human being who has ever lived on this earth. It was heard by the people who painted the caves at Lascaux and Altamira, by the light of animal fat lamps that flickered like small indoor fires. It was heard by the people who built the first cities, who kept a hearth at the center of every home. It was heard by people in every language and every climate, on every continent, through every age of human history. It is the one sound that is universal. The one sound that needs no translation. And tonight it has found you. It will be here tomorrow night too. And the night after. In whatever form you need it. The actual fire if you have one, the video, the recording, the memory, the gentle imagining. Your nervous system doesn't require perfection. It just requires the invitation. You have given it that invitation tonight, and it has accepted. Somewhere the fire breathes. Pop. A soft settling of ember. A shifting of warmth. The hiss resumes. Slow. Low. Ancient. Yours. Sleep well. You are held by something very old and very good. And it has been watching over you in one form or another for as long as there have been people in the dark who needed the warmth. Let it watch over you now. There is a particular quality to this kind of resting that is different from simply lying down and waiting for sleep. You may have experienced this difference yourself on nights when sleep felt unreachable. When you lay in the dark and the mind remained stubbornly alert, cycling through the day's events, rehearsing tomorrow's concerns, returning to half-formed worries the way a tongue keeps finding a sore tooth. That kind of lying down is not restful. The body is horizontal, but the nervous system is still running, still bright and vigilant, not yet willing to release. What we've been doing tonight is something different, something older. We've been engaging the mind, but gently. We've been filling the evening hours, not with demand or urgency, but with the kind of soft, unfolding story that firelight was made for. The kind of narrative that settles the mind into its own natural rhythm, the way a river settles into its bed once the rain has stopped. Your ancestors understood this, though they would not have used words like parasympathetic nervous system or default mode network to describe it. They understood it in their bodies. They understood it in the way a shared story around a fire made the group feel closer, safer, more whole. They understood it in the way children fell asleep not when they were commanded to sleep, but when the story had carried them far enough into the dark that sleep simply found them. Tonight, the story has been carrying you, and sleep is close. Let's rest in something very specific for a while. Imagine the sound of one particular type of wood burning. Oak is a wonderful wood to imagine. It burns long and slow with a deep, consistent heat. When oak burns, it produces a sound that is less sharp than pine, less crackling and more of a sustained hiss, with infrequent but deeply satisfying pops. The coals of an oak fire glow long after the flames themselves have died down, holding heat the way old stone holds heat, generously and without hurry. Or perhaps you prefer pine. Pine is more dramatic. It crackles more frequently. The pops are sharper and more varied, because pine contains more resin than oak, and as those resin pockets heat, they explode in small bursts that are enormously satisfying to the ear. A pine fire smells extraordinary, the resin releasing into the air as a kind of sharp, clean sweetness that clears the nostrils and somehow suggests altitude and cold and vast open forest. Or perhaps something softer, driftwood, that ghost-colored material that the sea has stripped of its bark and bleached to silver. Driftwood burns with unusual colors, because the salt water that has soaked through its fibers over months or years releases into the flame, and the sodium in the salt turns the fire orange, and the other minerals turn it green and blue, and occasionally a pale, flickering violet. Watching driftwood burn is like watching something alive tell its whole story at once, in color. Whatever would you choose in your imagination, it is burning now, patiently, generously, without haste. And the sound it makes is exactly right. Let's think for a little while about the warmth of fire and what warmth does to the human body. We tend to think of warmth as a simple comfort. We are cold, we approach the fire, we become warm, we feel better. But the effect of warmth on the body goes much deeper than that simple transaction. When warmth is applied to the skin, whether from a bath, a warm room, sunlight, or a fire, it triggers a physiological cascade. The blood vessels near the surface of the skin dilate, opening wider to allow more blood to flow close to the warmth and carry that warmth to the body's core. This vasodilation is a profoundly parasympathetic process. It is the body choosing to distribute resources generously to the surface, to relax the constriction of the blood vessel walls, to let blood move more freely. As the blood vessels dilate, blood pressure tends to drop slightly. The heart, no longer pumping against the resistance of tightly held vessels, can slow its pace. The muscles that surround the vessels, that hold them slightly constricted during states of stress or cold, can soften. And as the muscle tension softens, a signal travels upward through the nervous system. Things are good. Things are relaxed. There is no emergency. The autonomic nervous system is constantly reading these signals from the body's periphery, from the skin, the vessels, the muscles, and calibrating its level of arousal accordingly. When the periphery is warm and soft and open, the autonomic system concludes reasonably that it is safe to shift toward rest. There is a very old practice, found in cultures across the world, of the warm bath before sleep. In Japan, the evening bath, the ofuro, is a central ritual of daily life, deeply embedded in the culture as a transition between the activity of the day and the rest of the night. In Turkey, the hammam. In Scandinavia, the sauna and the cold plunge. In countless other places and times, some form of warm immersion before sleep has been practiced as a natural preparation for rest. The fire is an older form of this same wisdom. For most of human history, fire was the only source of warmth available when the night grew cold. There was no heated room, no insulated wall, no furnace blowing warm air through vents. There was only the fire. And so the human body evolved, over hundreds of thousands of years, to associate warmth from fire with all of the physiological conditions that accompany it. The dilated vessels, the slowing heart, the softening muscles, the downward drift of arousal toward sleep. The warmth of fire prepared our ancestors for sleep every single night, consistently, reliably, for more generations than we can count. And so your body receiving warmth, even imagined warmth, even the gentle imagined heat of the fire you're resting beside tonight, is receiving the oldest sleep preparation signal it has ever known. Let it prepare you. There's something interesting about the specific sound of wood crackling that I want to return to for a moment, because it relates to a concept in neuroscience that is both simple and profound. Your brain, at every waking moment, is performing an extraordinary task. It is not just passively receiving information from the senses. It is actively predicting what sensory information it is about to receive, and then comparing those predictions to what actually arrives. When the prediction is accurate, when what you hear matches what you expected to hear, the brain processes that confirmation very efficiently with very little computational effort. When the prediction is wrong, when something unexpected arrives, the brain must work harder. allocating more resources to update its model of what is happening. This predictive processing system is why surprises are tiring and why familiar environments are restful. It's why you can tune out the sound of a familiar fan but snap to attention at an unfamiliar noise in the dark. The brain is constantly making bets, and when the bets keep paying out, when the world keeps being what the brain predicted it would be, the system relaxes and functions on a lower level of arousal. Now consider the sound of a crackling fire. On one hand, it is unpredictable. The exact timing and character of each pop and crackle cannot be anticipated. Your brain cannot form a precise prediction of when the next crackle will come, or how loud it will be, or exactly what frequency it will occupy. And yet, on a broader level, the fire is entirely predictable. The brain has encountered this type of sound across the evolutionary history of the species, and it knows exactly what it means. It knows that crackling fire, within a certain range of loudness and frequency, is not a threat signal. It knows that the sound will not escalate suddenly into something alarming. It knows that the general character of this acoustic environment, its warmth, its rhythm, its steady presence, will remain consistent. So the brain holds both things at once. It keeps a gentle thread of attention available for the small, irregular variations in the fire's sound, the pops and crackles that keep it softly present. And it allows the vast majority of its computational resources to rest, because the big picture prediction, fire is safe, fire is known, fire is home, keeps coming true with total consistency. This dual quality, unpredictable in detail, perfectly predictable in essence, is one of the rarest and most restful things an acoustic environment can offer. It is why people find rain so soothing. Each raindrop is its own event, unpredictable and individual, and yet the rain itself is utterly familiar and benign. It is why ocean waves are hypnotic. Each wave is different, and yet the ocean is constant and known. Fire has this quality in abundance, and your brain, resting in the sound of it, can afford to let its vigilance go because the big, important bet, is this safe, keeps being answered, yes, yes, yes. Let your jaw be soft. This is one of the places where people hold the most tension without knowing it. The muscles along the jaw, around the hinges below the ears, the muscles of the temples that clench and grind through the day and sometimes through the night. Notice if there is any holding there. Don't force a release. Just notice and allow. Let your forehead be smooth, not pressed or furrowed, just neutral and smooth. The way your face is when no one is watching and nothing is required. Let the muscles around your eyes soften. Not closed tightly, just softly closed, gently resting. The eyelids are such thin things, such delicate curtains. Let them rest as lightly as they can, barely touching, barely there. And the shoulders, one more time. Let them fall if there is anywhere to fall. Let the weight of your arms be held by whatever surface is beneath you, and let the shoulders be simply nothing. Not holding, not carrying, just resting. This is the physical experience of safety. Not safety as an abstract concept, not a reassurance from outside, but safety as a biological state. The actual, measurable, embodied experience of a nervous system that has shifted its resources from vigilance to restoration. This is what the fire was always offering. From the very first night, a human being sat beside a controlled flame in the dark, the nervousness loosening, the grip on alertness easing, the breathing slowing in the warmth. This is what was always on offer. Rest. Actual rest, the kind that heals. I want to say something about dreams before we drift completely away from words. The relationship between fire and sleep is not just about the falling asleep. It reaches into what happens during sleep as well. Psychologist Frederick Coolidge at the University of Colorado has explored a compelling theory about fire and the evolution of human dreaming. His argument goes something like this. Before the control of fire, our ancestors, like every other primate, were vulnerable to nocturnal predators. Sleep, especially deep sleep, and particularly the dream-rich, memory-consolidating stage called REM sleep, requires a certain kind of physiological lowering of defenses. During REM sleep, the body is profoundly relaxed, almost paralyzed, in order to prevent acting out the content of dreams. Waking from deep REM sleep takes longer than waking from lighter sleep stages. This made deep, extended REM sleep genuinely dangerous in an unprotected environment. An early hominin sleeping deeply in the open night, with no way to hear a predator's approach until it was very close, would have been in peril. The nervous system, aware of this at some subconscious level, would have been reluctant to drop too deeply into sleep. Fire changed this. With a fire burning at the entrance of a shelter, or at the center of a camp, the likelihood of a predator approaching unseen or undetected dropped dramatically. Most large predators avoided fire. The group members who were lighter sleepers, who remained somewhat alert, could tend the fire and wake at signs of danger. And those who could afford to sleep most deeply, who could descend into the richest, most restorative stages of sleep, were protected by the fire's presence. Coolidge suggests that the control of fire may have significantly expanded the hours and depth of REM sleep available to our ancestors. And in doing so, it may have profoundly shaped the human brain. REM sleep is where dreams happen, but it is also where the brain performs some of its most important work. Consolidating memories, integrating new experiences with old ones, processing emotions, making the kinds of creative and lateral connections between ideas that seem impossible during waking life. There is a reason that difficult problems sometimes resolve themselves overnight, that you wake with a clarity you couldn't find while awake. That is the work of REM sleep. If fire extended and deepened our ancestors' capacity for REM sleep, then in a very real sense, fire may have made us smarter, more creative, more able to learn, to adapt, to imagine. The long story that fire tells, the story of warmth and safety and survival, may include a chapter that reaches into the very structure of the dreaming brain. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, the ancient conditions for deep and nourishing dreaming are present. You are warm. You are safe. The fire is tended. Dream well. The fire, in the oldest stories of every culture, is alive. Not literally, not in the way that animals or people are alive, but in a way that every human instinct recognizes and responds to. The Greeks had Hestia, goddess of the hearth, who was given the first offering at every sacrifice and was considered the most essential of the Olympians because without the hearth, there was no home. The Romans called her Vesta and maintained a sacred, eternal flame in her temple that was never allowed to go out. Tended by the Vestal Virgins, who kept it burning as a symbol of the city's continuity and survival. The Persian tradition of Zoroastrianism treats fire as sacred to this day, maintaining fires in temples that have burned continuously for centuries, in some cases for over 1,000 years. In Hindu tradition, Agni, the god of fire, is among the most ancient of the Vedic deities, the messenger between the human world and the divine, the transformative power that takes the raw and makes it cooked, takes the cold and makes it warm, takes the dark and fills it with light. In indigenous traditions across North America, fire is understood as a relative, a living being that must be treated with respect and gratitude, that has its own nature and its own needs and its own wisdom. You feed a fire. You attend to a fire. You speak to a fire. You thank a fire when it has kept you warm. These are not primitive superstitions. They are the distilled wisdom of cultures that lived in close relationship with fire for thousands of years. Cultures that understood something about the relationship between fire and human life that we have perhaps allowed to go slightly out of focus in the age of electricity. They knew that fire was not merely a tool, that it was not just a means to an end, that the relationship was mutual, that in sitting beside the fire, in receiving its warmth and light and sound, you were participating in something that exceeded the merely practical. The fire was giving you something you needed, something that, in the deepest places of your physiology and your psychology, you cannot do entirely without. The feeling of being at the center of a circle of warmth in the dark. The feeling of the world being just now exactly the right size. Perhaps you have noticed something tonight, as the words have come and gone, as the ideas have arrived and been allowed to settle. There has been a quality to this listening that is different from reading a screen or watching something urgent or demanding. The pace here is slow. The information comes without pressure. You can let it wash over you and take what you take and leave what you leave and drift if you drift and come back if you come back. This is how fire has always taught. Not in a lecture, not in a list, not with the hard edges of a document or a specification, but in the long, slow, conversational hours of the evening, when the practical concerns of the day are finished and there is nothing left to do but be present with each other and with the warmth. The best knowledge, the deepest knowledge, the kind that settles into the body and stays, has always been transmitted this way, not through effort and memorization, but through presence. Through the soft, repeated, accumulated experience of being somewhere safe and quiet and warm while ideas move through the air around you. You have been in this process tonight. You are in it right now, and it has changed something even if you cannot say exactly what. There is a quality that the Japanese have a word for, mushin, which translates roughly as no mind or empty mind. It is a state associated with Zen practice, with the highest forms of martial arts, with the kind of effortless mastery that looks like nothing is happening when actually everything is happening perfectly. Mushin is not the absence of awareness. It is the absence of self-conscious, effortful control of awareness. It is the state in which attention flows naturally where it is needed, without force, without management. The master swordsman in Mushin does not think about where to move his sword. The sword goes where it needs to go. The master calligrapher in Mushin does not think about the brushstroke. The brush moves as it must. And you, right now, approaching sleep, are moving towards something like Mushin. Not the martial arts version, not the calligraphic version, but the most universal version. The mushin of the body letting go of the management of itself. Of the mind releasing its grip on the day. Of the nervous system stopping its effortful maintenance of alertness and allowing the ancient, automatic intelligence of the sleeping body to take over. You don't have to manage this. You don't have to do anything. The fire is doing it. The warmth, the sound, the light, the oldest comfort in the world. It is doing what it has always done. And you are doing what you have always done. Responding. Let the thoughts drift now if they want to drift. Don't hold them and don't chase them away. Just let them move through, like smoke moving through a dark room. Present for a moment, and then gone, dispersed, harmless. If you find yourself thinking about tomorrow, that's fine. Just notice the thought, tomorrow, and then return to the sound, the fire, the warmth, the dark. If you find yourself thinking about something that happened today, that's fine too. Just notice today and let it go. The day is done. Everything that happened, happened. And now it is night, and the fire is tended, and you are in the warmth, and there is nothing more to be done with the day. If you find yourself nowhere in particular, just drifting without content, without image, without clear thought, that is very good. That is the threshold. That is the place right before sleep finds you. Don't try to enter it. Don't rush toward it. Just rest here at the threshold, in the warmth. Sleep will come through that doorway to find you. It always does. Before we arrive at the very end of this night, I want to spend a little time simply being with the fire, not talking about it, not explaining it, just being beside it the way your ancestors were beside it. The fire is in its late stage now. The active flames have largely given way to a wide, deep bed of glowing coal. If you look at it in your mind's eye or in the warmth you feel right now, you can see the extraordinary landscape of the ember bed. It is not flat. It has topography. Small hills and valleys of ash, ridges of red-orange heat, places where the coal is so hot it appears white at its core, transitioning outward through yellow, through orange, through the deep rose red of the outer edges, and finally into the fine gray ash at the periphery where the heat has nearly completed its work. The light from this ember bed is not the flickering, variable light of active flames. It is steadier, more constant, a warm, pulsing radiance that changes very slowly, very gently, brightening slightly when you breathe toward it, or when a small current of air moves through the space and settling back down again a moment later. The sound is extraordinary in its quietness now. You have to be very still to hear it. Just the faintest, most delicate crackle, less a pop than a whisper. The sound of wood that has almost finished its transformation into heat and carbon and ash. The sound of something completing itself. And the warmth from an ember bed is a full-body warmth, not the bright, intense warmth of the active flame. It radiates outward steadily, reaching you at a distance, wrapping around you, reaching even the parts of you that are slightly turned away. You could fall asleep facing this warmth and it would still be there when you woke, still quietly offering itself. This is the fire at its most generous stage, and it is keeping you company. Let's talk very quietly about what it means to be kept company. There is a loneliness that belongs to the night that is different from ordinary loneliness. You can be surrounded by people during the day and never feel alone. But when the dark comes and the world narrows to the walls of a room, there is sometimes a quality of isolation that doesn't quite go away even with other people nearby. A sense of the individual body, the individual nervous system, having to manage the night alone. Our ancestors dealt with this by gathering, by being present to each other in the firelight, by making sure that no one had to manage the dark on their own. The fire was the medium of that gathering, the thing that made it possible to see each other in the darkness, to know where everyone was, to feel the group's presence even through the night. Tonight, you are not alone. Whatever brought you to this video, whatever form this night has taken for you, whether you are in a room full of sleepy people or in a room entirely by yourself, you are part of a lineage of millions of human beings who have done exactly this, who have sat beside a fire, or listened to one, or remembered one, and allowed the warmth to quiet the particular loneliness of the night. Every person who has ever lived in a northern winter and gathered close to a fire with others has been in the same relationship you are in right now. Every person who has ever been cold and then found warmth. Every person who has ever been frightened by the dark and then found a circle of light. You are in good company, enormous company, the whole long human past, stretched out behind you, all of it ending in this moment, in this warmth, in this sound. Let your breathing slow one more degree. Not by trying, not by controlling, just by permission, by giving your body permission to be exactly as slow as it wants to be. The brain, at the threshold of sleep, generates a particular kind of electrical activity, slower than the quick beta waves of alert waking, but more active than the deep delta waves of deep sleep. These threshold waves, the alpha and theta rhythms of drowsy, drifting consciousness, are the brain's way of transitioning. They are associated with hypnagogic states, the strange, beautiful, half-dreaming experiences that sometimes occur right at the edge of sleep, when imagery begins to arise from somewhere below deliberate thought, when the mind starts to make its own pictures. You may already be there. You may already be somewhere on that edge, hearing these words from a great, soft distance, feeling them arrive like warm light from somewhere far away. That is exactly right. That is exactly where you need to be. The fire crackles somewhere below the words. Pop, and then the hiss, and then quiet, and then you. There is one more thing worth knowing quietly before sleep takes over. Every night you sleep, your brain performs a process of consolidation. The experiences of the day, everything you learned, everything you felt, everything you saw and heard and tasted and touched, are replayed, reorganized, and integrated into the larger structure of who you are and what you know. Sleep is not a pause in life. It is the processing of life. It is the time when the day's data becomes part of you in a lasting way. And the quality of that processing depends significantly on the quality of the transition into sleep. The more gentle and gradual the transition, the more completely the nervous system releases from daytime arousal before sleep begins. The deeper and more restorative the sleep tends to be. What you have done tonight, what this hour or more of quiet conversation has done, is given you a long, slow, gentle ramp down from the day. The ideas have moved slowly. The words have been unhurried. The warmth and the sound of fire have been present throughout, at the edge of awareness, guiding the nervous system steadily downward from alert to drowsy to the beautiful hovering threshold. This is not nothing. This is, in physiological terms, exactly the right preparation for exactly the kind of sleep the brain needs. You have set yourself up well for tonight, and tomorrow morning, when you wake, there will be something from this evening, from the quiet and the warmth and the ancient sound, that will still be with you. You won't remember it as a specific thought or fact. You'll just notice, perhaps, that you feel slightly more settled than usual, slightly more at ease, slightly more connected to something old and good inside yourself. That will be the fire, carries forward. It always has. The fire is very quiet now. Just the embers, just that soft, deep, rose gold pulse of heat, the occasional tiny sound. Not even a crackle anymore, just the faintest whisper of wood releasing its last warmth into the air. The night is around you, and it is kind, full of stars and silence and the long, slow turning of the earth. Your breathing is the slowest it has been all day. Your heart is the slowest it has been all day. Every cell of your body is receiving the signal that has been accumulating all evening, the signal carried by warmth and sound and story and science and memory. Sleep. You can sleep. You are safe. The fire is tended. One of the most ancient and beautiful things about being human is this: we are creatures who need to be gathered. Not always, not every moment. But at the end of each day, after the effort and the movement and the doing, we need to gather somewhere. We need to feel the edges of ourselves settle in from the wide dispersal of the day's demands. We need a center, warmth, light, the sound of something known, around which to collect ourselves back into wholeness. For most of human history, that gathering place was the fire. And something in your body still knows this, still moves toward warmth at the end of the day, still responds to the sound of crackling with something that might be called recognition or homecoming. You have come home tonight, in whatever form the fire has taken, the actual flame, the recording, the imagination, the memory. You have gathered yourself back around it. You have allowed the day to disperse, and the evening to slow, and the body to soften, and the ancient signal to arrive. You are gathered. You are whole. You are home. The fire breathes. You breathe. The night breathes. Slow, slower, and the sound goes on. That low, ancient, trustworthy sound. The sound that was the last thing 10,000 generations of your ancestors heard before sleep found them. Imagine, for just one more moment, what it felt like to be one of them. Not the struggle of their lives, not the difficulty or the danger. Just this, the final moments of a day lived fully, in the body, in the world. The moment when the fire has settled to its ember stage, and the community around it has grown still, and the last voices have drifted into silence, and the only sound is the breathing of the people and the breathing of the fire, and the stars are out in their extraordinary multitude, and the air smells of night and with smoke and the particular cold cleanness of the hours before dawn. And in that moment, a body, a human body very much like yours, lets itself go heavy. Not with effort, not with trying to sleep, but with the simplest, most fundamental biological surrender. The day has done what it could do, and now there is only this: the warmth, the safe dark, the sound. And sleep comes, as it always has, as it always will, not as something earned or achieved or worked toward, but as something natural. As something the body and the night have been conspiring toward together, all along, since the sun went down. Your ancestors knew how to receive that. You know how to receive that. You are receiving it right now. The sound of the fire, ancient and familiar and exactly right, carrying you across the last small distance between waking and sleep. It is yours too. Receive it. Rest in it. Sleep.